There is one photograph that, if it were ever made public, could ignite unrest in cities across the world even today. That is why, for 15 years, the United States has kept it hidden. In May 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed. The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda. Even in May 2026, 15 years later, the world has never seen a single genuine photograph of his dead body. Think about it. The world's most dangerous man was killed, yet the proof of his death remains hidden. But the real question is not why the US never showed it. The real question is what would have broken if they had. Osama bin Laden, the 17th child in a family of 54 children, was actually the son of a wealthy and religious Saudi Arabian businessman. Despite that, the USA ensured that his body never reached anyone's hands and buried him thousands of feet away in the sea, far from human access. There were three major reasons behind burying Osama bin Laden at sea. The first reason was that Osama had effectively been banned by his own homeland, Saudi Arabia, and there was no place there willing to receive his body. Now the question arises. Osama was born into one of Saudi Arabia's most influential business families, right? So why was he banned? Osama's family was so wealthy that when the Saudi king's treasury began running low, the bin Laden family literally paid the salaries of several government officials out of their own pockets for 6 months. Not only was the family wealthy, but they were also deeply religious, including Osama himself. Every year during Hajj, when Muslims from around the world visited Saudi Arabia, Osama's father personally hosted renowned Islamic scholars. As a result, Osama frequently met them and built relationships with them. But once again the question returns. If he was so religious, why was he banned? According to Osama's mother, he fell into the trap of extremism. She believed that his college environment played a major role in his radicalization. While studying public administration at Jeddah University, Osama met members of an activist organization called the Muslim Brotherhood. His mother believed these people gradually brainwashed him and radicalized him in the name of Muslim supremacy. Coincidentally, during this same period, the USSR invaded Afghanistan, a Muslim country. From that point onward, Osama's extremism grew even deeper. He frequently made secret trips to Afghanistan to support the conflict there and used his existing connections to establish relationships with extremist groups operating in the region. He then began recruiting volunteers from Saudi Arabia to participate in the Afghan war. Rather than training them himself, he outsourced their training to other organizations. His next focus became fundraising, something that came naturally given his family's status. By 1984, he had established a base in Peshawar, where he directly supervised volunteer training. A database of recruits also began to take shape, and gradually everything operated like a structured organization. This marked the beginning of al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Iraq's new leader Saddam Hussein began expanding toward oil-rich neighboring countries. After Kuwait, Saudi Arabia appeared to be his next target. To defend Saudi Arabia, especially Mecca and Medina, Osama wrote a letter to the Saudi king requesting permission to deploy his volunteers against Iraq. But before his forces could mobilize, news arrived that Saudi Arabia had invited the Americans for assistance. From this point onward, began Osama versus America. However, to understand that conflict, one must first understand Osama's journey, how an intelligent engineer transformed into a terrorist. Osama completely rejected American military presence because he wanted Saudi Arabia to remain free from Western influence and to be governed solely by what he believed were pure Islamic principles. As a result, the USA became his primary target. Using his network, he issued a fatwa encouraging Muslims to travel to Afghanistan for military training, presenting the fight against perceived enemies as a religious duty. The religious appeal proved effective. More than 4,000 people reportedly left Saudi Arabia for Afghanistan after the fatwa. Saudi authorities strongly opposed this movement and imposed travel restrictions on Osama. Using the pretext of a business meeting in Pakistan, he managed to leave Saudi Arabia, entered Afghanistan, and never returned. Saudi Arabia reportedly made several attempts to eliminate him afterward. Some reports also suggest that the United States later offered Osama's body to Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia refused to accept it. Pakistan was the next possible destination for the body. But it too never received it. President Obama stated that there appeared to be some form of support network for bin Laden inside Pakistan. Therefore, the United States neither handed over the body nor considered it necessary to involve Pakistan fully in the operation. Over the years, some Pakistani political figures publicly referred to bin Laden as a hero or martyr. This became the second major reason for the burial decision. The United States wanted to prevent the creation of a shrine dedicated to a terrorist, an error it believed had already occurred. With Saddam Hussein, even before Osama's death, plans for disposing of his body had reportedly been prepared. After the raid, Navy SEALs conducted an initial identification of the body. Interestingly, the mission commander was still not fully convinced. Knowing Osama's approximate height of 6 feet 4 inches, they compared him beside another soldier, who was around 6 feet 2 inches tall, and concluded through the height difference that it was indeed Osama. When the commander later informed President Obama, Obama jokingly replied, "You had $65 million for helicopters, but not $10 extra for a measuring tape?" The remark briefly eased the tension among the soldiers. But the mission was far from over. The body was transported from Abbottabad to Afghanistan for DNA confirmation, and then, within roughly 12 hours, flown to the USS Carl Vinson stationed in the Arabian Sea. After final verification, Islamic burial procedures reportedly began. The body was washed, wrapped in white cloth, and final prayers were recited by a U.S. military officer while an interpreter translated them into Arabic. Finally, the body was placed inside a weighted bag and committed to the northern Arabian Sea. The body was effectively lost forever. This decision reflected lessons the United States believed it had learned from Saddam Hussein. After the 9/11 attacks, Saddam Hussein had been accused of supporting terrorism and possessing chemical and biological weapons, while also being responsible for atrocities against Kurdish civilians. Following his capture and trial, Saddam was executed in 2006. Respecting Islamic traditions, his body was returned to his birthplace in Tikrit for burial. Despite a 4-day curfew, thousands gathered, chanted pro-violence slogans, fired weapons into the air, and called for revenge. His grave eventually became a symbolic gathering point for extremists who continued celebrating his legacy. The United States wanted to prevent Osama from becoming a similar posthumous symbol of terrorism. Burial on land therefore became an unacceptable option. The alternative, cremation, was also impossible because Islam strictly forbids cremation. So, while attempting to respect Islamic customs, the United States chose burial at sea. Even then, it faced significant criticism from parts of the Muslim world. Why is cremation forbidden in Islam? Islam generally considers cremation disrespectful. After death, the body is traditionally washed. Wrapped in white cloth, funeral prayers are offered, and burial should ideally take place within 24 hours with the head facing Mecca. If a Muslim dies at sea and transportation to land within that time frame is impossible, sea burial may be permitted after completing the earlier rites. According to reports, the United States handled Osama's body in accordance with these rituals. Nevertheless, critics argued that sea burial was intended to humiliate Muslims or that the circumstances did not justify such an exception. The issue was never just about one photograph. The greater concern was the chain reaction that might follow. If graphic images of Osama bin Laden's bullet-ridden face had become public, they could have served not merely as proof of death, but as propaganda for extremists. Extremism often spreads through imagery as much as ideology. Every frame can create a narrative, and every narrative can inspire another. President Barack Obama himself stated that releasing such images could radicalize people and create future security threats. Understanding Osama's mindset was also difficult, and one clue lay in his personal library. Among his books were works such as Bob Woodward's Obama's Wars and writings by Noam Chomsky criticizing American foreign policy and military strategy. At the same time, his collection also included conspiracy theory books such as The New Pearl Harbor, which argues that America orchestrated 9/11 itself, and Bloodlines of the Illuminati, which claims that a secret society controls the world. Ironically, a man considered the mastermind behind 9/11. was also studying alternative narratives surrounding those same attacks. The CIA did not release everything recovered from bin Laden's computers. According to the agency, files posing national security risks, corrupted files, copyrighted materials, and certain content based on its nature were withheld. One such category reportedly included an extensive pornography collection. This presented a striking contradiction. A man who frequently criticized American society for immorality and objectification of women, including in his 2002 letter to America, was allegedly consuming such material himself. The recovered files also reportedly contained an al-Qaeda job application form asking disturbing questions. Have you ever been convicted by a court? Have you ever been imprisoned? What objective do you seek to achieve through jihad? When you become a martyr, whom should we contact? The greatest tragedy of extremism is not merely that people die. The deeper tragedy is that people lose their humanity while they are still alive. Every extremist was once an ordinary human being. At some point, they stopped questioning. Blind certainty replaced doubt. Hatred replaced compassion. Brainwashing exploited those emotions until they believed only they were right and everyone else was wrong. When a person stops listening, stops questioning, and embraces hatred and revenge above all else, that is when an ordinary individual can become a terrorist. To encourage broad-minded, scientific, rational, and constructive thinking among Indian youth, I also run a science channel called Get Set Fly Science. If you have time, do check it out.